Vince never forgot the sound of the lock clicking shut for the last time. He was 12 when the eviction notice came. His father's face hollow as he crumpled the paper in his fist. The mining company had just cut half of its workforce. His loyalty apparently meant nothing. For 2 years they lived in his uncle's basement, a damp, low-ceilinged space divided by laundry racks and silence. At first Vince didn't mind. His dad was home every day instead of down in the mines, and there was something warm about the closeness. He didn't consider it a cost-cutting measure, and how his mother made pancakes on a hot plate. It felt like an adventure. But his father's smiles grew thin. His voice frayed at the edges. He'd pace the cramped basement, muttering about space and decency, as if the walls themselves were judging him. Dad was his own harshest critic. He would talk to himself when he didn't think anyone else was listening. A man should be able to keep a roof over his family. One night, Vince woke to the sound of glass shattering and his father's voice, low and venomous, in the kitchen above. "You think I wanted this? To have my kids sleeping like rats?" His uncle's weary reply. "Nobody thinks that." The shame festered in him like a wound, and no amount of job applications or interviews could stitch it shut. His father's mood eventually painted the whole experience. He got them out of the basement and started working in a factory, but that shame seemed to linger. That roof, solid, permanent, it became Vince's obsession. He knew mining from his dad. He understood the blueprints that would make his dad's workers zone out, but he studied home and building construction instead of following in his father's footsteps. His father's gruff advice was to be a doctor, a lawyer, or chase stability. But Vince knew that kind of stability was a lie. Years after graduating, he worked for a non-profit building shelters. He saw the same cycle. Families waiting years for approvals, permits denied over zoning technicalities, funding yanked when the politics shifted. He even got with some non-profits and constructed a plan to get ahead of the homelessness crisis, as the mayor liked to call it. It was a detailed map of how the city could reroute the funding that went into emergency shelters to create more permanent affordable housing and possibly get rid of the need for emergency shelters altogether. No one took him seriously. Looking at the amount that went into homelessness, he knew that the funds for construction and ending this problem weren't an issue. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. Then there was Javier, a veteran with a laugh like gravel, who taught Vince how to patch a roof with scrap metal. They talked for hours about Javier's dreams, a tiny home community built by and for the unhoused. "Nobody's gonna hand us the keys," he'd say, grinning. "So why ask?" Javi would always tell Vince stories about communities of squatters and old military bases and unfinished construction. He'd talk about how some cities even allowed it, and didn't mind if they operated small businesses like coffee shops or clothing stores. Vince listened and really understood the frustration, but he always let him know, "That's not how things worked here. We gotta deal with the suits, Javi." He kept a convincing mask on to present like he was always happy, but Vince would catch him looking depressed when he thought no one was looking. Javi reminded Vince of his dad. He was proud and a real protector. He gave up his spot in the shelter to his sister and her kids. Vince got a tent for him and pretended like someone left it around the alley where Javi would hang out. Javi's tent was getting worn to where he had to tape up tears, but he wasn't about to complain or ask for a new tent. In a snowstorm, the city decided that'd be a perfect time to clear the encampments. Javier stayed behind to help the others pack, and lost his own tent in the process. Apparently he couldn't find a place in time. Vince got a call 2 days later from the morgue. Hypothermia, they said, but they were wrong. It was the paperwork, the ordinances, the endless no, the mayor's backroom deals. Javi didn't even ask the others to share their tent. He just... Tears welling in his eyes on the walk back home. Vince walked past the street where a group of workers were digging to repair utilities. The walls inside Vince's mind collapsed. He'd been stockpiling materials for years. Extra lumber, wiring, insulation, skimmed from job sites. Now it all clicked. He knew where they'd go. The old Richter mine had an entrance hidden behind a chain-link fence near the rail yard, its tunnel stretching like veins beneath the city. He knew the mines were abandoned but still stable. He could hear Javi's voice telling him, "Nobody's gonna hand us the keys." He was done asking permission. The first night, rigging a stolen generator to the grid, his hands shook. This is a crime. But then he thought of Javier's sister and her kids, sleeping in a shelter with a 2-month waiting list for housing. He thought of his father's eviction, the way his father obsessed over cleaning the basement floor of his uncle's place. Of all the doors that can only be opened for the right kind of paperwork. After identifying the abandoned mine, he made the first group of rooms over the past week, working after he got off. Mark stands outside the chain-link fence, snow melting in his hair as he pulls out his phone and calls Javier's sister, Maria. "I have a place," he says. "It's not legal, it's not pretty, but it's dry and it's warm." A pause, and then her voice, brittle with hope. "When do we move in?" That's the moment. The generator hums the life underground, and in the flickering light, Mark sees not a crime but a future. The guilt burned away. For the first time in his life, he wasn't asking.